Well, greetings one and all, and welcome back to another video with your host Andrew. Today you join me for a deep dive into these two pens here as we review the Preppy here on your left and the Plaisir here on your right. So let's join me after the titles and crack on with this. Well, greetings one and all, and welcome back to another video. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing a deep dive review into these two pens here. So we've got the Plaisir here on the bottom and the Preppy on the top. So as per usual, I am going to give you the dimensions. Superb. And then what we're going to do an overview of the Preppy to start with. Now I've chosen these two pens primarily because we've got obviously going back to school in about a week's time, and for a lot of people you might be wanting to get yourself some stationery. Now what better way to start your new school year than with an exceptional fountain pen? Okay, now I've got two really nice options here. I've got the Preppy, and if you're feeling a little bit more splendiferous, if that's such a word, you have also got the Plaisir here. So two very fine options. Okay, so the Preppy, what do you get for about £4.15 from Colt Pens? Well, you get a really exceptional writing instrument. That's what you get. Okay, and I'll explain to you why later on in the video when I do the actual final thoughts and feelings. If you feel like you want to skip this section because you've seen Preppies to your death, then obviously you might want to skip to the end, and I've got timestamps in this video should you wish to choose to go to any section. Okay, so the Preppy, flat tops on both ends, very nice. We've got the designation on here which says 0.3, which is very useful. We've got the very functional clip which goes into a shirt pocket with no problems whatsoever. And then we've got the patented slip and seal mechanism underneath. And what's really fun about this is if I just uncap it and then just slowly push it in, you can just see the spring operating underneath. And that is just a lot of fun. And the great thing about this is Platinum have said that you can keep this pen capped for probably just over a year, and it will still write just as well as when you inked it. Now, one thing which you will find is if you are new to fountain pens, there are some fountain pens which aren't particularly well sealed, which is a great shame. And what will happen is if the sealing isn't particularly good, the actual nib will dry out eventually, and that can be a bit of a pain, especially if you like inking a lot of pens and you don't want to go through the hassle of having to clean them out. So Platinum, kudos to you. Absolutely fantastic system. Okay, so it's a full demonstrator pen, and by demonstrator I mean it's translucent. Back in the day they used to actually take these pens to shops, and these would be the demonstration pens to show to the shops, which is why they're called demonstrators. And that would have served as a way of showing off the internal working mechanisms. So if you had a button filler, which is basically like a plunger, you would be able to see like the things like the sack moving on the inside and so on and so forth. They weren't ever designed to actually be sold as pens, but over time they've actually proven to be really popular, especially if you like watching your ink sloshing around. And we'll get onto that bit in a second. On the main barrel we have got Platinum Preppy on there, which is very nice, and then we come down to the bottom with a hexagonal end cap on here with the injection moulding on both sides. And you can actually see just a little bit of a crease down some of it as well. The actual barrel, although it does look cylindrical, is actually faceted, which is quite interesting. It's not something which is always apparent, but as I spin it, you can actually see those facets, and they're very nicely rounded. Okay, so let's have a look underneath the actual cap. Under the cap we have got a stainless steel nib, and it's designated with the P for Platinum and 0.3. Now, dependent on what size you go for, that will change. And there are some varying sizes which you can get for this. If you're interested in knowing what other sizes are available, you can check back in my actual overview, which I did at the beginning, where I gave you all the details for the dimensions. Or you can go to Cult Pens and have a look there. Okay, underneath the barrel, we have got a proprietary cartridge from Platinum. I don't believe they can take the actual cartridge converters, unfortunately, but you can refill these ink cartridges should you wish to do so. You just need to have a blunt syringe and some bottled ink and then just literally fill it up. That's absolutely fine. They are a little bit stiff initially to push in these cartridges, so you don't feel that you're going to break it. What I would suggest you do is put the cap on, take the cartridge out, put it onto a flat surface, then put the cartridge in, like so, and then apply as much pressure as you can. Don't try and do it with the actual nib, because you may end up breaking the nib. Okay, now I was mentioning beforehand that you can actually eyedrop this pen. So what is eyedropping exactly? Well, it's basically filling up the entirety of this barrel with fountain pen ink. And why might you want to do that? Well, if you like writing quite a lot and you want to see your ink sloshing around on the inside of here, which can be actually really mesmerizing, especially if you've got shimmer and sheening inks, then it's really fun to see the inks just sort of moving around on the inside, and you will get yourself a very, very large filling capacity. So that is the Preppy in general. Let's just make sure that's done tightly. Really nice and quick, simple capping mechanism. Fantastic. Okay, now on to the Plaisir. Now the Plaisir will range anything from about £12.95 up to about £33 on Cult Pens. But as I say, you can use my discount code to get 10% off, and I'll have that in the description below, as well as links to both of these pens. Okay, so the Plaisir. This one is £12.95, and I love this vibrant orange. We've got a more cigar style pen here, which is, I guess, a little bit more classical than that of the Preppy. Very nice functional clip. It's a bit stiffer than that of the actual Preppy, and there's no problems going into a shirt pocket, as you can see. Again, we've got the slip and seal mechanism, although this time you won't actually see it. The actual section is exactly the same as it is on the other one, in that it is quite straight. And then we have got the cartridge in there as well. Having said that, on the Plaisirs, I do believe you can use the Platinum proprietary cartridge converter as well, although I've not actually tried that yet. In terms of the actual capping of this pen, it's not as fun or as good to use as perhaps that of the Preppy. You've got metal threads on the inside and plastic threads on here. And if you're not too careful, you can actually wear away the threads, which is a little bit of a pain. I wish that it had been a plastic body. I know why they've opted for metal, just to make it a little bit more premium, but they really should have made the actual threading actually metal if they were going to do that, even if it increased it by an extra £1. It is just, over time, I don't think this one is going to be holding up quite as well as that of the Preppy. Anyway, we've got a really nice vibrant orange barrel. It is a metal-based pen, even though it feels quite plasticky. It is actually metal. And then on the centering, we've got Platinum Japan and Plaisir. And this immediately gives this pen a little bit more presence when you've got it into your shirt pocket or on a table. You can really tell the difference between the actual quality of these pens quite visually, just by having a look at these. Fantastic. Okay, so underneath the nib, we have got, again, another fine nib, and this is 0.3, and it is an absolute joy to write with. Both pens will write exactly the same. The only thing which you're paying for is just a slightly better trim and a slightly better finish. With the exception, as I said, of the actual threading on the actual barrel, which is a bit of a shame. I would never put metal on plastic threads, especially on a cheaper pen. I don't think it's going to stand up to the test of time. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we are going to go on to doing a writing sample. So join me over in the next section. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so what we're going to do today, we're going to start off with the Platinum Preppy. And as you can see, as I'm writing with the pen, we have got a really quite an extra fine line on here. Now I'm using a used paper today, and I really love writing on this paper. It's a really nice coated paper, and it really does show off the qualities of a fountain pen at a very affordable price. We've got a 0.3 nib, and that's steel. And it's very, very pleasant to write with. It's not feedbacky, it's just very, very smooth. Okay, so the ink is just the cartridge, which is just a platinum black, I believe. Okay, so let's write out the quick brown fox. Okay, and as you can see, writing with this pen, it works perfectly fine for both sort of doing joined up writing or cursive, and it does well with both the actual capitals and lowercase letters as well. In terms of flow for this pen, it's decent, you know, it's not going to be the wettest thing in the world, which is absolutely fantastic, because you don't want to have a particularly wet pen when writing on cheap paper. And let's face it, if you're going to be using this pen specifically for working inside, say, a school, then certainly a Platinum Preppy is going to be the pen to go for. Having this extra fine nib, this drier ink, it does mean that you'll be able to write it on cheaper paper and you won't have any feathering or bleeding. Now, if you don't know what feathering or bleeding is, I will do another introductory video on some of the writing qualities, but just to give you a little bit of an overview. Feathering is when it starts sort of bleeding out and you get like a bit of a wobbly line like that, rather than a straight line. So yeah, bleeding is when you can see things coming through onto the other side of the page, and on this paper it performs absolutely fantastically. So really, really positive pen. In terms of any line variation, now that's the good thing about writing with a fountain pen, you can sometimes squeeze out just a little bit of line variation, and there's just the tiniest bits in there, but not that you're going to really notice, unfortunately. But if you put a little bit of pressure down, with certain inks you might get yourself a little bit more character to your lettering. Okay, so let's move on to doing the Plaisir. Okay, so I don't think this is going to be too much difference for you. Okay, now the nib is exactly the same, yet interestingly, it does look a little bit darker on here. So we're going to write down 0.3 again, just so you can have a side-by-side comparison. And this is steel. And this can highlight the inconsistencies of nib manufacturing. So we've got two pens here, and before we do move on, I'm just going to do a couple of lines here. As you can tell, the one on the left is ever so slightly thicker than the one on the right. But anyway, let's carry on. Again, we've got platinum black in here, so I'm not going to bother putting that in because it's exactly the same cartridge. But I will write out the quick brown fox. Wonderful. Okay, let's see if there's any variation in the line here. Not really, it's going to be pretty much exactly the same as it was with the Preppy. Okay, in terms of flow, it's about the same. I'll just do a couple of passes. Mildly wetter, I would say. Absolutely mildly wetter, but not enough to make a difference. I don't think there's any reason why this pen is slightly thicker than the Preppy. I just think it's just a case of manufacturing because they are exactly the same nib. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to move on to doing a size comparison, and we'll have a look at some other entry pens, and then I'll give you my final thoughts and feelings. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so starting from left to right, we have got the vibrant orange on the Platinum Plaisir. Then we've got a Platinum Preppy, a Faber-Castell grip in silver. Then we've got a hand-painted pen, which I did myself, which is the Twisby Go. And then we have got the Piccolo from Kaweco. So, all very nice pens, and all, I would say, in a similar price bracket. The Preppy being the cheapest and maybe the Go being the most expensive, just dependent on the time of year you buy this and any discounts on offer. Anyway, let's get these uncapped and we'll have a look at them in comparison to each other. So we'll do the Preppy and, or the Plaisir and the Preppy to start with. And they're all slip caps. And there we go. So as you can see, all these pens here have got a fairly similar length in them. Not one pen, I would say, is substantially longer than another. Maybe the grip, the Go and the Piccolo are roughly the same and slightly longer, but they've all got decent sections on there, and I don't think there's any particular pen there which you wouldn't get on with. Okay, so now let's move on to my final thoughts and feelings. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope the writing sample and size comparison proved useful. Okay, so on to my final thoughts and feelings. What do I like about the pens? What don't I like? Who's it for and who's it not for? So these are both absolutely fantastic pens. The Plaisir is ever so slightly taller than that other Preppy, but to be honest, there isn't a huge discernible difference in terms of the writing capabilities with these pens. They've both got exactly the same nibs and they both perform exactly the same. So why might you want to go for this pen? Well, this pen certainly, with the Preppy that is certainly going to be for someone who's on a really tight budget. They don't want to spend a lot of money, they just want to have a really practical pen to write with, and they don't mind using cartridges, or they don't mind eyedropping the pen. I personally prefer this pen over the Plaisir, just purely for a couple of reasons. I love seeing the internal working mechanisms on this pen. It's a joy to clean out this pen. It's really, really easy to maintain. And they actually have now introduced a new range in Japan, which should be coming to Europe and the States. I know luxury brands of America have now been teasing pictures of them, and they've got a Preppy range which have got some Japanese patterning on it. So you've got the waves, you've got the hemp, you've got all those various other patterns. You've got the lovely Sakura as well, and they were really fun looking pens. And you know what, if you want to start collecting fountain pens, you're not going to go wrong with a Preppy. Okay, so who's this pen not for? Well, clearly if you don't like transparent pens or ultralight pens, this isn't going to be a pen for you. It's very practical that it allows you to post, and it posts quite deeply, but it's a no thrills, no spills fountain pen. Okay, so why would you spend an extra £5 or £6 to go up to this pen? Well, quite clearly it's aesthetical reasons. They've both got exactly the same capabilities. You can post them both. They post very nicely, and the clip is slightly better on this one. You get the center ring, or the center band in America, and it just generally looks a little bit more stylish. Having said that, is it worth an extra £6 just for that? Well, that's just dependent on you, to be honest. I can't really make your mind up on that aspect. For me, yeah, I would spend an extra £6 if it came in an interesting colour. I think that there's a lot of fun things which you can do with this pen, but the one major downside with this pen is that it has metal threads on plastic threading, which in my eyes, especially with this injection moulding on here, is a big no-no. Partly because actually, if I demonstrate it, finding sometimes the right place to actually start threading it can cause your cross-threading, and that would be disastrous. So there's something to take into consideration, and I would hope that maybe in the future Platinum could maybe consider actually increasing the pen's cost a little bit, just so that you have a little bit more longevity with the pen, because eventually those threads are going to get damaged and you won't be able to put the actual barrel back on. Now, I don't know anyone who's actually run into this problem, but mine has started to actually go a little bit in places. In fact, actually, if I just show you right now, you might just about see that the threading is starting to go down a little bit in the center. And likewise on the other side, it could be that that is partly to do with the actual injection molding process, but certainly on the ends, they are getting a little bit rough. So certainly something to consider between these two pens. Anyway, you are going to get yourself a fantastic pen. Both pens do go into your shirt pocket with no problems whatsoever. But immediately you're going to tell that you've got a much more premium looking pen in your pocket with the Plaisir. So if aesthetics is your reason, maybe consider going for this pen. Both are going to, as I say, give you an absolutely fine writing experience. Anyway, I hope that this has proven useful today, and best of luck with your new term going back to school, or if this is just like an introductory fountain pen, I hope you would consider these pens. They really are absolutely fantastic and a joy to write with. So that leaves it for today. Join me next week and we will have another video. So till then, stay safe and goodbye for now.